Comics. I'm Joe Getcho, and this is SpideyJoe's One Shots. Today I'll be covering issues 24 through 29 of Spider-Gwen from 2018 in a collection called
Gwenom,
written by Jason Latur and illustrated by Robbi Rodriguez, Veronica Fish, and Olivia Margraf. If you haven't already, and you really should, go and listen to our podcast episode on Edge of Spider-Verse, where we cover the first appearance and origin of Gwen Stacy as Spider-Gwen. And this story takes place somewhat after the one-shot review I did of Spider-Woman in episode 3, so that's where Gwen lost her spider powers only to get them back intermittently in the form of a wearable isotope delivery system. That's important to note for later. Even though this is only 6 issues, there's a bit of backstory that you need to know going into it. Otherwise, the story arc won't really make a whole lot of sense. But before I get into it, I just want to remind you everything here is from Earth 65, which is an alternate reality version of the Spider-Man story from Earth 616 or Earth Prime that most everyone is familiar with from the mainline Spider-Man comics. So when you hear character names, a lot of them are quite different from their counterparts in the mainline continuity, just so you know. The first character of importance is Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. His origin and superpowers are the same as our Daredevil, but his mentor Stick was killed very early in his training by the Hand, and so the Hand took Matt into their organization as a boy to continue his training. Naturally, he grows up very differently than his counterpart, first becoming a feared assassin, and later becoming Wilson Fisk's right-hand man until Fisk is sent to prison and Matt is able to take over as the kingpin of crime. He still earns a law degree, and he's superpowered, so he's almost a worse kingpin than Fisk because he's very manipulative and he knows how to navigate the system. Once Spider-Woman came on the scene, Matt's been trying to recruit her and manipulate her into being his right-hand man, right-hand woman. Naturally, Gwen is not on board with this plan. Another character we see in the story is Logan, a.k.a. the immortal Mr. Murderhands. Yeah, this variant is a bit different, being born in the past as a Japanese samurai who is cursed by a witch to live on Earth one day for every life he's taken, and one day for every life he'll take. Now, similar to Wolverine, Stryker recruits him into the Weapon X program under the alias Logan, in which he gains his famous adamantium claws. He later joins a Black Ops team for S.H.I.E.L.D. and teams up with Kitty Pryde. Also, Gwen thinks the name Mr. Murderhands is ridiculous, which it really is. So she calls him Wolverine because of a crazy storyline from 2016 in the all-new Wolverine Annual, where Gwen and the all-new Wolverine, Laura Kinney, swap bodies. This is similar to what happened in the Ultimate Spider-Man storyline all the way back in 2004, where Peter and Logan unexpectedly switched bodies. Hey, it's comic book logic, so you just have to go with it. And last but not least, we can't have a Venom story without Venom. Eddie Brock, who's the most popular host for Venom, revealed a connection between radioactive isotopes and the lizard formula, and somehow by combining these two items, an ooze is created that grants powers to its host, but also releases some deadly black radiation goo called Venom. Yeah, that's Earth 65 is weird. Wanting to have Gwen by his side, Matt's goal is to give the parasite to Gwen to restore her powers and corrupt her into being his ally, because he's a lonely supervillain who no one can relate to, but he also sees something in Gwen that makes him think that they're similar somehow and that she would make an excellent partner in crime. All right, so that was some exposition to get to our story for today. We start off with the Venom symbiote being activated and going for Gwen. As they bond, she quickly puts in her headphones and starts blasting the Mary Janes in her ears. That's the name of the band she's in. Did I mention she's a drummer? Anyway, it manages to keep the symbiote from completely taking over until Gwen finds Matt standing over her dad in the hospital. She loses it and goes on a rampage, finding out that Alexi Saitovsevich, a.k.a. the Rhino, was the one who trampled her father. Even though she knows this is all being orchestrated by Matt Murdock, she takes the chance to get revenge. Alexi's holed up at a bar, although according to him, he isn't hiding from Spider-Woman. Although when he sees her, he notices she is dressed differently and remarks, "What happened? Was she bitten by vampire?" A fight breaks out, but of course this was actually a setup, so the cops show up with tear gas and sonic batons. And cameras, because they record part of the fight, and then Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, shoots Alexi dead. So now it's all over the news that Spider-Woman has killed the Rhino, which is ironic because the Venom symbiote probably would have made Gwen do it, but fortunately, Castle gets to once again do the dirty work. Gwen tries to lay low for a bit, but ends up running into the Bodega Bandit, who she roughs up a bit, but fortunately notices a poster of her face with the caption, "Have you seen our friend?" shortly after, which prevents her from doing anything that she would regret. Shortly after, the cops get a lead from a concerned citizen who's afraid of becoming a midnight snack for some red kryptonite Spider-Woman. Gwen has another meetup with the Reed Richards from this universe that we saw during the Spider-Woman arc and asks him to track down the location of evil Cindy Moon so she can confront her about her past and find a way out of this mess. So she actually meets up with Cindy and gets a pretty decent speech about being controlled by her emotions and failures, and that's how Matt so easily manipulates her. It must be from all that yoga and meditating she's been doing. Gwenom goes on a few various rampages, but inevitably it comes down to Ben Parker telling Gwen that she has to make Murdock pay for hospitalizing Captain Stacy and to make losing Peter count for something. She's been given this power, meaning the Venom symbiote, so it's her responsibility. Yeah, even the Watchers are surprised at this turn of events. Meanwhile, Frank Castle is doing the hard work of storming the tower and fighting off the Hand to get to Murdock. He busts in, and then, of course, Gwenom shows up for the final showdown. Castle goes in for the kill, but Gwenom intervenes, and then Captain America shows up, although this Cap is Samantha Wilson. Yeah, so the situation is really getting out of hand, pun intended, and the Watchers are concerned that events here might somehow jeopardize Earth 8, which is a utopian reality and the default future for Earth 65, in which Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy get married and have 2 children. Hey, Bendis wrote it, what can I say? Matt was hanging on to Gwen's interdimensional travel watch from her Spider-Verse days, and so right before Gwen can deliver the final blow, the watch goes nuts and whisks her away to another dimension where even Gwen is like, this was already a temporal dumpster fire, all we need is a crossover. She looks around and she sees herself? Yeah, you didn't think the story was going to wrap up neatly, did you? That's it. It's to be continued. It takes the next several issues for Gwen to come to grips with her dual identities, confront Matt once and for all, and break free from Venom's grip. All in all, I've enjoyed this series, and I'd recommend this to any Spider-Man fan, really, who's interested in learning about alternate realities and more Spider-Verse characters. But it's not really much of a Venom story. It's really centered on Gwen and her personal struggles, so there's not a lot of focus on Venom other than him being a storytelling tool. So docket points for that if you want to, but I still think Spider-Gwen is interesting enough that it was a really enjoyable series. And that's a wrap. Don't forget to check our podcast, We Like Comics Because They Have No Bones, on anchor.fm/bonelesscomicspodcast, our website, bonelesscomicspodcast.wordpress.com, and our YouTube channel, tinyurl.com/bonelesscomicspodcast. Give us a like, subscribe to us, and send us your comments with your thoughts on our podcast and on the SpideyJoe's one-shots. You can also find us on social media at Boneless Comics Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and Boneless Comics 1 on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and I'll get you later.